You ready?
We're on.
Oh,
We're on.
we're on. 7 o'clock.
Good evening.
So good evening everybody and welcome again to tonight's council meeting. Just some house rules that I keep reiterating in relation to mobile phones and personal devices, if they could be turned off or onto silent, please. Welcome also to those that might be watching the live streaming on YouTube, which I understand there are some people who do that, so welcome to you. We'll start with the usual recording and live streaming of council meetings. The statement read by the CEO, Mr. Bird.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however audio from the entire room is captured. By speaking during question time or at any time during the meeting, you consent to your voice and any comments you make being recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is of course to hold us more accountable and improve transparency of council's decision making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Item 2, acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people. If we could be upstanding, please.
The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we are now on. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Item 3, confirmation of minutes. 3.1, ordinary council meeting M12. Move in a second. Thank you. Councillor Napstein seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Item 3.2, special council meeting. Special council meeting, M13. Could I have a move in a seconder, please? Thank you. Councillor Forsyth and Councillor Pearce. All those in favour? Carried. Apologies. There's only one apology tonight. Councillor Keeble is overseas and has given council a lot of notice on that. Item 5, obituaries and congratulations. Could I start from my left, please?
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Look, I'd like to congratulate tonight. I want to congratulate quite a few people. The group that got together in Myrtleford to erect a man cave for young Geordie Miller, 22-year-old, brain cancer and having chemo at the time. Now, they decided that they wanted to put in a shed in his backyard and they approached me, so I of course rang council and we found that there was a couple of overlays in their backyard and a planning permit and a planning permit was required but not necessarily a building permit. So my next lot of congratulations goes to the planning department here at the Shire, who after a bit of muscle actually got the thing through, and the Geordie's coming home I think next Thursday after another lot of chemo, and they were putting in the electrical work today and they're also lining it today, so the thing is ready up and going, and I just think that this is a great community effort. And I'd just also like to pass on congratulations to the CEO who managed to massage this through the planning department, so thank you very much.
Just a response from Mr. Bird there.
If I could just clarify, that was the building department.
Building department, thank you, not planning. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got an obituary. It's for a local chap that lived in our
Bright area for many, many years, Barry Alexandra, a true community man involved in various activities within the football club. He had the Alexandra's real estate in Bright, which was basically staffed completely by his own family. He was the president, vice president and a number of other duties down at the football club, well known down there. His two boys played footy there. Barry was there every week. His daughter played netball there, and his wife was there to do whatever she could do for the club. Thanks to Barry, John Alexander, and condolences to Kay, Shannon, Cameron, Regan, Leah, Priscilla, and Barry's grandchildren, all of them. The Alexanders cherished and loved Barry right to the final siren in this battle over the last 12 months, and you could see them as a team, especially in the last few months, still all together, walking as one, and all sticking together and holding the family together and supporting their dear father. So all dignified and all as one. So we've lost a great man. Well done, Barry.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas.
Nope, nothing.
Councillor Roper?
Oh yes, Councillor Keeble, if you're watching, I hope you're having a rubbish time in Switzerland.
Yeah, here.
Best season in 30 years.
Councillor Knapstein?
Just to congratulations to the Shire outdoor staff. They kept the whole Shire looking brilliant throughout the holiday season, and they've put in such an effort, and it really shows. And again, I reiterate what Daryl was saying about Barry Alexander, a lovely man and a beautiful family person, a gentleman and a gentleman. So he'll be sorely missed. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd just like to congratulate again all the Australia Day Award winners in our council from the Alpine Shire Citizen of the Year. It's not down to, but all the other recipients of those prizes, of those awards, and also there's some information we don't get right until sometimes after the event. So we have actually 3 OAMs in our Shire this year. I was privileged to know of one of them who came from Myrtleford, John Charles Taylor, for services to the community of Myrtleford. But it wasn't until after those celebrations that I became aware of Peter John Stokey from Bright for services to the conservation of the Victoria Malleefowl, and Professor David George Wood from Tawonga for significant service to chemical engineering education as a researcher, mentor and academic to professional organisations. So it's my sincere congratulations to all the Australia Day Award recipients, and I hope and I encourage people to nominate those who they believe are worthy of awards for next year's awards. So we'll just move on to declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. Is there nil? Thank you. Public questions on agenda items. However, I will take questions, whether they're not necessarily on the agenda items. But I have just a moment, Mr. Dyer. I'll take two. There are 2 questions here on notice. I'll deal with those first. The first one is from the Upper Kiowa Valley Community Association Incorporated, and welcome to the representatives here tonight. Would the Alpine Shire consider allowing 2 green waste deposits per month at the waste facilities for residents in fire-prone areas during the declared fire season when the burning off period has ended? There are many residents of this Shire whose residences are located in areas which need to be cleared and maintained in that condition on a regular basis to avoid problems in the event of a bushfire emergency. Currently, the Shire charges more for green waste than for hard rubbish, and this puts an unfair impost on residents, ratepayers, who wish to keep their gardens as clear as possible for the fire season. I'll pass that one to Ms Cook.
Good evening. Firstly, thank you to the Upper Kiewa Valley Community Association for the question. I'd just like to address the points regarding green waste disposal charges being more than rubbish disposal charges. Green waste disposal is actually charged at $17 per metre cubed, and waste to landfill disposal is charged at $43.50 per metre cubed. So that's the difference in the cost between the two types of waste disposal. We actually receive numerous requests throughout the year for free or subsidised waste disposal, both for green waste and for hard rubbish as well. It's one of these things that come in a lot to the Shire. It comes in from community groups, from ratepayers, from commercial operators, and from from visitors as well. So looking for some form of subsidised waste disposal at the transfer stations. So we recognise that this is an issue that our community would like us to investigate further. And so we're in the process at the moment of analysing how a ratepayer subsidised voucher service might work. That will inform considerations for our next budget process, being the 18-19 budget process, that we're actually moving into that cycle now. So this information will allow councillors to make an informed decision when considering the 18-19 both draft and final budget to see whether some form of ratepayer subsidised voucher service for waste disposal might work.
Thank you. The second question from the same group. Would the council please consider allocation of league funding of a tractor gang mower for use in the Kiewa Valley? Currently, when a large mowing job is required, such as the West Kiewa Trail to Pebble Beach, there is a long waiting period as a tractor has to be brought over from the Ovens Valley. This means that the task is often much more difficult and time consuming as grasses have grown more have had more time to grow. I think Mr Jeremy, you have a reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
So firstly, I'd just like to start by thanking UK VCA for providing us with a potential solution. So usually we only get issues, but in this case we've also got an issue and a potential solution, so that's appreciated. I've followed up with our maintenance team specifically around the West Kiewa Trail, and what I've learned is that we don't bring plant across from the Ovens Valley to maintain the West Kiewa Trail. We actually use the Kubota tractor, which we have located in the Bright Depot. The team thinks it's suitable for the works, and in Mount Beauty Depot. Sorry about that. The team thinks it's suitable for the works, and using a larger tractor would be both more difficult and probably result in a poorer outcome there, so poorer quality cutting of the grass. What our team did confirm is that the frequency with which we mow the West Kiewa Trail is less than the CBD and other high priority reserves. So they've had a look at that and they consider that that's an appropriate frequency given the nature of the trail. However, what they've recognised is that in a high growth period like we had in the recent spring, when they schedule mowing of the West Kiewa Trail, in the lead up to that the grass can begin to look unkempt because we had very high growth rates during this season because of the weather. So what the maintenance team said is they're very happy to respond to feedback from the community. If they believe that the trail needs to be maintained and they need to bring forward a scheduled mow, then they're very happy to do that. The other proposal that our maintenance team are progressing is to level and fill the ground at the entrance to the West Kiewa Trail. So at the moment it's a bit rough, but they believe that with some use of a backhoe and filling that area, they can bring the John Deere, which is a smaller mower, in. They can bring it in and mow that area at the entrance to the West Kiewa Trail at the same time as they're doing the verges on Embankment Drive. So the benefits of this are that mower gives a lot higher quality cut, so it's a finer cut, and also the frequency with which they can efficiently get in there is a lot higher. So we won't be able to do that for the whole trail because the amount of work to fill and make smooth the whole of the trail is, it wouldn't be cost effective to do that. But certainly they're going to progress with those works at the entrance to the trail so that we can improve the quality of the finish there.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Well,
this will just be done. It's being progressed, or either has been or will be progressed. So it's a small amount of work that's needed to fill the levelling, and then the maintenance team will incorporate that in the schedule.
Thank you. There are no more written questions on notice, so I'll take questions from the floor. Mr. Dyer?
Just for the record, my name is Ray Dyer and I live at 167 Selses Lane, Ovens. A couple of years ago, my question is to the Mayor. A couple of years ago I met with the Director of Assets, Charlie Bird, which is the CEO now, and Dave Barry, the CEO, down at Jubilee Park Toilets. I only spoke to Charlie. Dave was a bit late. And I said to Charlie about the toilets, and I also said to Charlie that there's quite a few issues that I'd like to discuss with him apart from just the toilets. Now, he hasn't bothered to do anything about that, even to the extent of putting letters into me saying there's nothing more to discuss with me, even attacking my character and credibility. So what I say to the Mayor and all councillors...
Objection, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Is it a question or a statement?
It's a question.
I'm unsure.
It is a question.
Well, we'll just get straight to the question.
The question
Thanks,
is,
Mr. Dyer.
do you have any trouble with me going to work cover as regards the CEO and quite a few jobs around this shire that need doing, especially Paul Punker? What has happened there is absolute criminal. What has happened? No, what has happened up at the football ground?
The question was, Mr. Dyer.
You have any queries me going to work cover?
Well, no, I have no qualms with you going
That's
to
good,
any
okay.
authority that you
As
wish.
regards Paul Punker, what has happened to Paul Punker?
Any authority that you wish in regard to any
because
subject
as far as I'm
that you
concerned,
wish.
the CEO hasn't even bothered to talk to me.
So I'm answering
number
that
one.
question.
Yep.
Your second
question
sir?
is, I spoke last council meeting, the December meeting, straight out and said what I saw at the July meeting before and during was straight out dictatorship, and also the October and November meeting.
Objection, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
What did you say, Mr. Mayor? What was the answer?
I have no idea, sir.
No,
So
it was
what
not
is the
dictatorship.
question?
Straight out. That's not how you act.
Well, that's your view.
That's my view, and what I
Thank
saw
you.
in
I'm
the
not going to
December
argue
meeting was
anymore with
also
you.
dictatorship.
I'm
Are
not
you going
arguing
to talk
anymore.
about that issue?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've had your say. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Dyer. I think I've given you more than your share tonight. You know the rules. Are there any more questions from the floor? Sir, please.
Derek Coppell from Brighton District Ratepayers Association, and we were considering whether to ask this question, but in light of the responses to Mr. Dyer, I think we will ask one. Our council is aware that locals claim that there's been 4 motor accidents in Port Punker since the Port Punker upgrade, and compared to their remembrance of none in the last 40 years. So are you aware of that? And the second question is monitoring in place to provide data for evaluation of safety in the Port Punker upgrade, and data that could be used as a basis for evaluation of potential improvements?
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Do you have, or Mr. CEO? Mr. Butler, I personally am aware that I've been notified that there have been 4 instances.
Thank you, Derek. I'd confirm as well, so we've had discussions, we're aware of the 4 incidents. We've followed up with the police, so there's been no police report filed on those 4 incidents. Myself and Francine have been down to Port Punker, and we've met with Joe and John at the Punker Pantry because they personally witnessed to them, so we followed up on that. I've had discussions with Drew Carey, who's the engineer, and Francine, and we're currently investigating. So with an awareness now that there have been incidents, what are the potential ways in which we could essentially address those problems? So yes, we are aware of them. We have briefed, so through Charlie, we've briefed councillors on those issues, and we are now taking action. So earlier we committed to monitor the situation and to see whether there was an issue, and now we are taking action on the basis that there have been a few incidents. Like I said, though, the police have not had any reports from those incidents, so it's a little bit hard. We're going off people's feedback that we've heard anecdotally in people in the street. So we haven't really got any hard data to go on other than people's kind of what they've observed in the streets.
I understand. Thank you for your response. Thank you.
No more, Mr. Butler. That's
No,
you're right.
The,
Okay. Thank you.
I had some other things I might ask outside.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sure. No further questions? And we'll move on. Presentation of reports by officers. 8.1, Mr. Bird, contracts approved by the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were 2 contracts approved by the CEO since the last council meeting, both to Countrywide, one for the resealing the Kiewa Valley and the other for the Anderson Street pavement works. It's recommended that the contracts approved by the CEO be noted.
So noted.
Councillor Roper, Councillor Nicholas, thank you. It's for noting only. All those in favour? Not that it needs to vote, but anyway. The Director of Assets, Mr. Jeremy, has no reports this evening. Make hay while the sun shines, Mr. Jeremy.
That's right. Good chuckle, isn't it?
The bulk of the work this evening is Director Corporate Natalie Cook, the Audit Committee meeting number 2, that's item 8.3.1. Ms.
So
Cook?
moved.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas. Seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Nicholas.
Just wanted to pick out one thing for people who have read any of the agenda. A lot of audit is checking what's been done and then improving procedures, but the risk register, which is reviewed and now in place and being operated on, is much more forward-looking and a really good way to manage our future risk. And it's an important document to have, and the renewal was important, so it's great to see it's happening.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
No, thank you.
No. Any further comment? None. All those in favour? It's carried. Item 8.3.2, quarterly report, council plan. Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report provides a second quarterly report against the Alpine Shire Council Plan 2017 to 2021. The quarterly report shows the progress is being made on the delivery of key council plan activities. Just a couple of highlights, and there are many more in the report, is that council has worked successfully with the new contractors to ensure a smooth transition to our waste and recycling contracts, and there was no disruption to services through this transition. And that, just to highlight that November was actually the busiest month of the event season in the Alpine Shire, with several large-scale events being delivered, including the Rod Run, Spartan and the Spring Festival.
Mover and a seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Knapstein.
I'll second.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Knapstein. Councillor Nicholas.
I would just like to say thank you to all the staff who helped deliver our council plan and make Alpine Shire a great place to be.
Thank you. Just a moment. Yeah, thank you. I just think it's appropriate that we have read in the newspapers just recently in relation to recycling and how that is affecting or may affect some councils. So our staff have done some investigation into our situation, and our contracts with Cleanaway particularly, as they stand, which are very recent contracts, are quite sound in that regard. So we're one of the small number of councils, I believe, that have got some really good written contracts That should protect us with our waste management services. And waste management is a big ticket item on any budget, and it needs to be managed well. So well done to the staff too for those contracts, the way they're written.
If I could also add to that, please, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is part of the issue is around the commingled recyclable material being shipped to China, and our commingled waste, so our curbside collection by Cleanaway, gets collected from the curbside, transported to Lavington, and that's where it gets sorted. And our other recyclable materials, which is collected from our transfer stations by Veolia, is transported to Melbourne, where it's also it's sorted there as well. So we're not affected by the current issue.
No. Okay. We'll just need to take a vote on that. All those in favour? That's carried. Item 8.3.3, planning application, 4-lot re-subdivision and modification of an access to a road zone 1. Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is application number 5, 2017-105.1, the 4-lot re-subdivision and modification of an access to a road zone 1. The proposal comprises a re-subdivision of 4 existing lots to create 4 new lots, and the proposed plan of subdivision has been provided in the report that you have received at page 16. This proposed development is now in its 3rd iteration before Council. Notably, this proposal came to the Council meeting on the 14th of November 2017. The applicant at that point made representations and the matter was deferred to enable a site visit to be undertaken between the owner, council officers and councillors. This site inspection took place on the 13th of December 2017. In attendance were the applicant, his sons, councillors and council officers. From a planning perspective, no new information was provided on the site visit or in the time since that would change the recommendation on the re-subdivision application as it has been considered by Council at that meeting on the 14th of November. The land in this application is zoned farming pursuant to the Alpine Planning Scheme, and a planning permit is required to subdivide the land. Both state and local planning policies seek to protect agricultural land and support the enhancement of agricultural activities. The relevant state and local planning policies are provided as attachment A to this report. In conclusion, the proposal is not supported by the relevant planning policy within the Alpine Shire Planning Scheme for the following reasons. The proposal fragments high-quality agricultural land. The high-quality agricultural land is proposed to be comprised within 3 lots. The proposal would create an additional 3 dwelling entitlement, and this may create a conflict with surrounding agricultural land uses. The proposed subdivisional layout is not site responsive. It will require the removal of a significant amount of native vegetation to facilitate common boundary fences and the realignment of internal access roads. No information has been provided on how each proposed lot will be managed or how the land will be used for agricultural use. Having considered the relevant provisions of the Alpine Planning Scheme, it is recommended that a notice of refusal be issued for the proposed 4-lot re-subdivision and modification of an access to road zone 1.
Thank you. Is there a mover and a seconder for the motion?
So moved.
Councillor Roper, is there a seconder? Councillor Knapstein. Councillor Roper.
I wasn't at the previous meeting when this was deferred. Since then there's been a site meeting and a look at what's going on. To mine, this application hasn't materially changed since we originally seen it, even though we have asked for some extra information that's been outlined by Ms. Cook. I would have hoped there would have been greater I suppose, effort from the applicant to take or heed or to take into account what the officer was trying to, or the efforts the officer made to help the applicant in this situation to achieve the outcome that he required.
Thank you. Councillor Knapstein?
I've got to admit I struggled with it too, because you do so want to say yes when people want to go ahead with plans that they envisage this and that, but the compelling arguments are here and I have to go with the recommendation. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there any further comment? Councillor Pearce? No, just further. We haven't voted yet.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to say anything really new.
Councillor Nicholas,
sorry.
okay.
But I understand the arguments about future and modern land use that have been put forward, but they're not reflected in our current planning documents, and that's what we need to base our decisions upon.
Councillor Pearce?
Yeah, I'll just add one query on that, where you mentioned that it meant there would be 3 more allotments. Did you say that in your spiel there?
There will be 3 dwelling entitlements.
Yeah, well, regardless of what would happen, there would be 3 or 4 dwellings additional. There wasn't much different. 1 dwelling maybe?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay, no difference. But, you know, it's...
No.
So
I think there's a misunderstanding there.
Well, you mentioned in there that it would result in 3 extra allotments.
3 dwelling entitlements.
3
yes.
dwellings.
Yes.
Sorry, 3 dwellings.
Yep.
Entitlements. So, regardless of that, there's going to be how many more allotments if this was passed?
There would be, if this was approved, there would be 3 dwelling entitlements.
So it's the same?
Currently there's 1. Yes.
Okay. But I look at a lot of these things, and you know, in time to time, similar applications, you know, could be in the same year, are submitted, and the first one is judged okay, even though it doesn't comply with all of the planning guidelines, and then the other one could be judged against, because even though it's a similar application, 443 hectares to be divided into 4 lots, there's still reasonable size, and one of the good things that happens there is it's not lying there idle land, it's land that's being used, you'd assume, in a smaller farm cove, and the land is probably better off at the end of the day. That's one of my theories, and that's what I'd like to submit.
Thank you. Just a moment, Mr. O'Rear, thank you. I apologise, I should have recognised that you were present, so I'll afford you an opportunity before we take a vote, sir. Thank you. Councillor Forsyth, is there anything?
I'm listening to Councillor Pearce here, and I usually back him up in a lot of the things that we do as far as planning goes, because I don't like to put a foot on things and stop them. In this instance, there was a lot of work done by the planning department. Plans were submitted by the planning officer to the applicant, which would have given the result, or a result, that the applicant could have worked with and would have ended up with the equivalent to what he is actually applying for. No change then came from the applicant as to what his intention or his requirements were. So even though Councillor Pearce is on about this 3 additional allotments, it's not actually, there would be 3 additional allotments under a proposed plan. The proposed plan by the planning department covers off on all of the requirements under our agricultural land requirements and under the state requirements. So that's where it's at.
Thank you. I'll talk to the Councillor Roper, who put the nomination forward. Councillor Roper, do you object if Mr. Irie has something to say?
I'll finish up. I have a right
Thank you.
reply.
I'll give you a right of reply at the end of that. Thank you. Mr. Irie, would you care to come forward, sir, so we can hear you? It might be a bit difficult from down the back there. Thank you.
I am frustrated. You can imagine I gave the planning department every opportunity. We had councillors there, council officers, inspect the property, and I did say to the planning department, Sam Porter, if certain parts need to be realigned, I am very flexible. Since the meeting in November, I've had no correspondence whatsoever with the planning department or this office. I assumed that was okay. If it wasn't, why didn't the planning department let me know we need to have changes here? We'll come in and sort it out. It's been since November. I haven't had a letter in any way or form to inform me that the council, the Shire, the planning department aren't happy. And I think when the councillors came out there, I did demonstrate. Why do you say there was no demonstration, a lack of demonstration from me? You seen, I showed you where my son planted chestnuts. If a proposed property goes ahead for him to purchase it, so how can you say nothing has changed? It's bullshit. Things have changed, and the councillors that come out there, the council officers, seen the changes, and they were satisfied on the day with everything with the satisfaction they got. How can you say there's been no changes since the last application? That is frustrating for me. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry to feel that way, Mr. Irie. In reality, just because there may be 4 titles, what you're seeking to do is a boundary realignment to make the titles bigger than what they currently are. Okay? So, yes, it's my recollection that the council officers did actually try to suggest to you that if you changed what you're looking for...
Someone's asked me to change it, Peter. Why didn't someone say we need to change this plan? I would have jumped at the opportunity.
Well, I am not the council officer in charge of this. I'm just saying what I'm seeing here in front of me. So what I see is that you actually have a process you can follow through now with VCAT if council votes against this, or I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. But what you're seeking to do currently here is a boundary realignment to make 4 titles of a size that... There is 4 titles, but you are seeking a boundary realignment, is my understanding of what this application is, to increase the size of the two smaller titles. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So the planning department in this state, in this situation, has decided that the notice of refusal. We're about to go for a vote. I would suggest that you have another course of action if this motion gets up, and we'll wait and see what happens after the vote.
Thank 2 years. 2 years.
Thank you. I think Ms. Cook, you have a point of clarification here.
I think there is just one point of clarification. The main issues with the high-level agricultural land are in the 2 blocks. I'm sorry, I can't see you through the chairs, Tony. Makes it very difficult. Are in the 2 lots, Lot 1 and Lot 2. In our site meeting on site, that was discussed in detail, and it was asked at that meeting, would you consider resubmitting plans with a change to the boundary lines of boundary in Lot 1 and Lot 2? And at the end of the meeting, you said categorically no. You would consider no changes to Lot 1 and Lot 2. Correct. You would consider small boundary line changes to Lot 4. That in itself is the issue with the high-level agricultural land, is the boundaries between Lot 1 and Lot 2, and at the end of the meeting you said categorically you would not consider any changes to those boundary lines. And that's where we are today with the planning.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Cook. We'll take the matter to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, as we need to go up another page, do we? Sorry, could I? So I assume it's carried then. 1, 2, 3. It is carried. All those against? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. I will not have that in my council. Thank you, sir, for doing that. It's not necessary. Okay. 8.3.4, next item. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. 8.3.4, planning application 5.2017.147.1. Use and development of a second dwelling. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is the proposal for the use and development of a second dwelling. The proposal is to use and develop a second dwelling on a site. The dwelling is proposed to be used in conjunction with the management of the existing uses on the site, being a vineyard, winery, cellar door, restaurant and accommodation. The State Planning Policy Framework and the Local Planning Policy Framework give support to this proposal. In addition, we have had a farm plan submitted which has been reviewed by an independent qualified farm evaluation professional. The full conclusions of that report are within the planning scheme, but the conclusions of that are in support of this proposal. We have received one objection to the proposal, and that objection has been considered also within this report. In conclusion, the application is considered to be consistent with the Alpine Planning Scheme, and it should be approved for the following reasons. The proposed development is generally consistent with the relevant provisions of the state planning policy and the local planning policy, including...
So moved.
Councillor Roper. Seconder. Councillor Knapstein, thank you. Councillor Roper. Sorry, before you commence, I'd just like to acknowledge that one of the persons who have lodged an objection is present in Ms Hall. Ms Hall, I will give you an equal opportunity at the conclusion of the councillors to speak. No, before the vote. Thank you. Councillor Roper.
It appears to me a considered application. I'm aware that a planning forum was offered to both parties for the applicant and for the objector, but unfortunately the days that are available and the short lead up time meant that wasn't possible. But objections have been heard, and I think this is a reasonable notice to allow another building at a high activity agricultural site in the valley, in the Ovens Valley.
Thank you. Councillor Knapstein? Nothing. Any further comment? Councillor Pearce?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, here we go. We've got one case over in the Kiwa where we've got a guy down there. He can't cut up a little bit of a block to put another dwelling on. And here we are, we've gone through the rules, and there's some in there that might say, oh, you wouldn't always do it, but We're talking in the recommendation here that it's going to be passed. Having said that, I very rarely have ever voted against a planning permit. I think it was once, and that was probably the most prime block of land we've got in the Ovens Valley. So it's just so difficult to read for some people out there. I think that it's very hard to read if you're going to win or going to lose, if you can understand what I mean. And that's it.
Right. Okay. Is there any further comment? Councillor Knapstein?
It's not random, and it's not like it's a lottery or anything like that, because the staff do their due diligence and they research each and every proposal as it comes through, and as read, this is how we are intending to vote, one way or the other. So it's not random.
I can answer Kitty on that one. She can question me. I'll go back. What do you mean? It's one person comes in and asks for a 4-cut dwelling, and another person comes in and asks for an extra dwelling on one block. It's yes, sure, the planning department goes through, but they've got to go by their own set of rules. As councillors, we can argue against them or disagree with them, and that's what we're doing here right now.
Thank you. Councillors, I understand that you have a difference there, and we'll note that. Ms Hall?
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak on
You
this.
have no 2 minutes, Ms Hall.
Okay. So part of the objection was the fact that this property has already been asked in the last 3 or 4 planning permits for a manager's accommodation. And each time they have been granted that because it's part of your state policy and local planning and so on. And then the people have turned around and made them into holiday accommodation. And they still have on site that ability to do that in 1 or 2 of the places that they already have. I see here that you've been very helpful from the planning department to ensure that this would go through. They have done hands over fists to be able to do that. But one of the things that we had asked for was that to be a 173 to ensure that the person who would be staying and using this new dwelling was indeed the manager and was indeed working as a manager, so that there wouldn't be any gray area at all around it. And I've read this and I don't get it. It says as long as they do the state planning. Well, I don't see where that really is in line. So other than that, I get that there's going to be changes. I get that there are some things that weren't looked at. This also said that DWELP hadn't. We've heard that DWELP did actually give their report. This one said that you guys hadn't. There's still inconsistencies that we see and we know. And we know that the Boyntons are on record in a interview with Bill Sykes to say that this was going to be a very huge project that they were going to be doing with day spa and everything else. And we as neighbors really want to make sure that our lifestyle and how we live is as protected. And if we don't do these things now, then as this project continues to go, our lifestyle will continue, then will be eroded. So all we're doing is saying, can we please, I hear you want to help and get this thing through, but can you please consider that that's one little area. They've never followed through on what they were supposed to do with their, and I see that you have to only take that on board with this one. But I would really like to ask if you would ensure that that the property be used just for that, because given any kind of loophole, there we go again with another holiday rental. And that is against the scheme, because there's only supposed to be so many residences on a farm. So,
Thank you,
Thanks.
Ms Hall. If you have a copy of the agenda, the last dot point on page 41 in relation to section 173 agreement, and page 44. Oh yeah, section 8 and 9 on page that are specific. So thank you, Ms Hall. Councillor Roper, right of reply.
Yeah, I object to Councillor Pearce's notion that this is anywhere similar to the previous planning permit. Excuse me, Councillor Pearce.
Hang on.
You don't have any say now. I have the final right of reply. If you look at this one, there is no further title being added to this. This house is on the single title, that is the farm as it exists. The previous one we saw, the application we had was a boundary realignment that was going to see an increase of housing on the land. It would have been possible for the previous proponent, if he had an agricultural enterprise of scale on that same land, to build other houses for his family or staff without putting them on a separate title. So in reality, Councillor Pearce, you use these planning applications and issues in some ways to further your own appearance at council.
I object. No, I object that. Councillor Roper, please. Thank you. Excuse me. We don't necessarily need the comment. I'll call the order. Thank you. That's done. Councillor Roper, you have the right to reply. Done. Finished. Thank you. Righto. Thank you, councillors. We'll take the issue, take the matter to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 8.3.5. Oh, okay. Proposed sale of land and buildings contained in Lot 2, Plan of Subdivision PS 344761E, formerly known as Lyndhurst, which is a building next door to us.
Second.
Oh, hang on. Councillor Forsyth. Who was the second? Councillor Pearce, was it?
This one's been on the books for a while.
Years.
My only... true. My only concern in this instance is that we did not do the subdivision prior to putting it up for sale, which is point 2. You've got to go through with it anyway, so... Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with authorising the Chief Executive Officer to sign the contract of sale. I would, however, ask the subdivision 24 months. Is that right? Is that part of the contract?
The subdivision won't necessarily take 24 months. However, we've allowed within...
Already determined, or are they still negotiable?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe that the subdivision will be along the lease boundaries as they are currently. I have not seen any proposal to realign any boundary lines there, but I would have to have a look at the maps and things. But my belief is that we're currently leasing a parcel of land that has boundaries associated with it under the lease. We are selling the same parcel of land that we are currently leasing.
My other question is it our responsibility or the purchaser's responsibility to pay for the subdivision costs?
It's ours.
Thank you. Any further comment? No. Councillor Forsyth, right of reply? No more? Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Item 8.3.6, report airport service leases for hangars at Paul Punker Aerodrome. Councillor. Ms Cook?
This report relates to the leasing of land at the Paulpunka Aerodrome for the purpose of erecting hangars. The recommendation is that the council approves and executes 2 leases as detailed in the recommendation report.
Councillor Pearce, Councillor Roper. Councillor Pearce.
A lot of nice things happening over the Mount Beauty airfield and Paulpunka as well, and that's what I meant to say. And this money that is raised by the rental of these goes back to the airport committee to assist them in maintaining the airfield, so it's good all round.
Thank you. Councillor Roper.
Nothing further to add. Councillor Pearce has summated the situation perfectly.
Thank you. Any further comment?
Thank you, Councillor Roper.
Good. We'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried. Item 9, Assembly of Council.
So move.
Councillor Pearce.
Second.
Councillor Roper. All those in favour? I don't think there's any need for comment on that. General business from my right. Councillor Knapstein, Councillor Roper.
Yes or no answer. Are we going to have the sporting facility out at the commonly known at the footy field completed by the completion date?
That's a difficult question, Councillor Roper.
Yes, we will have it completed by the completion date. You're talking about the Pioneer Park?
That's correct.
Yes. So the overall completion of the pavilion will be completed by the previous completion date. There's some question around when the intermediate milestone will be met, which is for the lower level. We'll make a decision on the 20th of February, so in the following week, whether or not that's going to be completed ahead of Easter or not, and if it's not, we'll make provisions to support the football club's activities.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bird.
I guess I'd just like to add that my understanding is that the contractor out there and his team are working very well and are striving to meet that target so they can be ready for the first game.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas? No. Councillor Pearce? No. Councillor Forsyth?
Yeah, just one. I brought it up earlier tonight. I'll bring it up for the general public, and that is that the signage as we enter the Shire really does badly need upgrading. I was informed tonight that there are only actually 7 signs. I haven't counted them personally. I think I've been past every one of them. But look, they are in a bit of a disarray, or they do need updating, and they are still carrying our previous logo, which is in upside down to what we're currently using. So they do need to be looked at, and I think they're going to be used. And I don't believe it's an expensive exercise. As I said somewhere tonight, it's probably a 2-week job, but still. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Assets will take that one on notice. Thank you. Item 11, sorry. Motions for which notice has previously been given. There are nil. And item 12.1.1, petition for provision of public toilets and facilities in Toowoomba South. Council has received a petition for the provision of public toilets and facilities in Toowoomba South. A report is tabled at the next ordinary council meeting in March 2018. So we've received the petition, and as is the governance rules, we will make comment on that at our next meeting. So it's progressing.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
On a previous issue in general business, someone's just come through on the YouTube, watching the YouTube, saying that the signs are actually UV degraded and also out of date.
There you go.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you to our viewers in the ether out there. And I'm pleased that my councillors are tech savvy and monitoring their YouTube channel whilst they're at the council meeting.
I think the term's connected. Connected to what?
Documents for sealing, item 13. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Nicholas. Thank you.
There aren't any. There's lots of them.
There's lots.
How is she, Pete?
There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:01.
Well done, Ron. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance. I understand we have a community meeting on the 15th of March
And here?
at the Kiowa Community Hall, and the next council meeting will be held in Myrtleford.
Oh, that's told me.
In March. The March council meeting will be held in Myrtleford at the probably the Senior Citizens Hall.
We'll just make that up there, or?
I've got on the 15th of March, I've got Upper Kiowa.
Yes, that's right.
15th.